Okay. Go on to item number 6, hearing appeals, overview of the water management and water shortage contingency plans.
So this evening, half our audience is here for this item. So, welcome tonight. But after this item, they're probably going to all jump off and go do their own thing. But this is our first public hearing. It's been noticed, and we've, sent out all of the brochures. Just a really good job, as I said before, and you'll see the brochure later on in this item. So all customers were made aware that they could participate and make any comments. As you recall, last month and the months before, we just finished the administrative draft of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and it was released on June 10th, maybe even June 9th, the day early. But with that 10-day time frame, staff just decided that this first public hearing would be just about the planning process and about the regional water system, just so that if anyone were to attend tonight, and even for board members, it's just a reminder, and you weren't expected to have everything memorized and already read by tonight, although we are happy to take questions and field any comments because it is part of the public record for the plans. So at this time, I'm gonna, just really turn this over to Rena. He and Jeanette and Marty Laporte and Jean Gar, all the consultant team, they did such a lovely job on this past year, getting this all together, especially with all the activities in this past 6 months with regard to the water supply reliability issues, which we've reported out before from San Francisco PUC. And just so you know, some of this may seem like a repeat just because you had a presentation in March from Marty Laporte and from Bosca's CEO, Nicole Sankula, but you'll just kind of, have some of that background information already, but this is to allow anybody who might be attending publicly. So Rena, if you're ready, it's yours. Yeah. Just let me know when you want me to change slides, okay?
So why don't you, I want to, because you brought it up to the board that, a really nice brochure went out to all of our water customers. And so I want to use that to the extent I can. And so why don't you go to page 57 of the agenda, because that's the timeline is on the very top of that. And I just kind of want to remind everybody what we've been working on, what we're working towards. So I thought Tammy did a really good job of introducing the subject here. It's actually, I was looking at some of the information, and it was literally a year ago today that the board authorized a contract with Managed Water to help us through the Urban Water Management Plan process, the update process. And so where we are at now, I want to start off with a timeline, is at the very top of this brochure, you'll see that, as Tammy had mentioned, on June 10th, we released the administrative draft for people to start looking at it. It's a large document, very complicated in many different areas, some curveballs kind of thrown at us. So, we thought it would be a good idea not to rush through it and give folks some extra time. So as she mentioned, this is the first of 2 public hearings, the June 24th. And again, it's just going to be an introduction by me and an overview of the Urban Water Management Plan process, and a review and a description of the regional water system that provides water to a whole bunch of people in this part of California. And then the idea is then at the July board meeting, Marty Laporte and her folks are going to be making the formal presentation on the results of the findings, the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and get into more of the details there. And to help the board get through that, the board president had asked, hey, would it be possible to create maybe some highlights, give us a 1-page summary of those areas in both documents that would help us kind of wade through it. You're more than welcome to read all the pages of the 2 documents and the appendices, but it might help. So Marty and her team, I think Jean created this, and she's here tonight, created a 1-page short list of areas that the board may want to be focusing their efforts as they go through the Urban Water Management Plan and get prepared for the second public hearing in July. So once we've had that second public hearing in July, then the idea is the board, since they're not meeting in August, in September at that regular board meeting, hopefully, any comments that we had would be reflected in the document if there needs to be. The board will have had asked their questions, and we'll be ready to recommend to the board adoption of the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And as we all well know now, the idea is that we are going to submit it to the Department of Water Resources on or before October 1st of 2021. So let's get into the overview, and you can leave it here, Tim, if you want. But what I just kind of wanted to share is just to get in the background for anybody who's listening to the board meeting that maybe not as familiar with the urban water management plan process, you know, what it's all about. And so for those who have been working in this for a while, we know that the Urban Water Management Plan Act was adopted by the state, actually it's Assembly Bill 797, almost 40 years ago in 1983, 1984. And it requires that if there's a water purveyor, a water agency, a city that has more than 3,000 connections or provides more than 3,000 acre feet of water, that they adopt an urban water management plan every 5 years. And the intent is to demonstrate that there's water supply, there's a reliability for that water supply in normal years, dry years, multiple dry years, and it's over a 20-year planning horizon. It also requires us to quantify the adequacy of those water supplies for the existing demands on the system now and any future demands on the system, again, during that normal year, during dry years, during drought years, and also to make sure that how water can be used efficiently. There have been some changes with the Urban Water Management Plan that we were made aware of. And if you look on the first page of the staff report on 47, there's 6 different things that I bulleted there. We have to do an assessment on a 5 consecutive dry year water reliability. We had to do an assessment on drought risk. We had to do an assessment regarding seismic risk. Take a look at consider consequences from climate change. Make sure that we talk to and address the groundwater supply coordination, and then make sure that the documents is something that can be read and understood by the typical layperson and not be full of a bunch of technical jargon. So the companion document to the Urban Water Management Plan, excuse me, is the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And when the board is going to adopt these 2 documents, you're going to find that you're going to adopt them both separately. They're both going to have their own resolution and recommendation for adoption. That's the way the state wants it. So you'll see us when we make that recommendation that you take 2 different steps so that they happen differently. So the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, now that again, as I mentioned, is a standalone document, and it's to talk about the district's preparedness and response during those periods of time where there's a water shortage. And the way the state defines it is the water shortage that, getting ready before that happens. What are you doing before you have a water shortage? What happens during that water shortage? And then what are you going to be doing afterwards so that you get prepared for the next water shortage? And hopefully it's supposed to be an effective and a practical planning tool that talks about, what can be done to provide opportunities for consumers or customers to reduce their demand. And then what can be done to augment water supplies to the water purveyor, and then requires, what kind of actions that, in this case, the district's going to take to make sure that we can manage the water supply during water shortage times. So just kind of stepping back a little bit, as I mentioned earlier, literally a year ago, the board authorized a contract with Managed Water. And since that time, we've been working very closely with their team. Marty Laporte, her team, they were very good at preparing a schedule. They've been through this before, so they had a very good schedule laid out on when they were going to have information prepared for us to review, when it was going to be ready for the administrative draft. And the whole idea was we were going to be working towards adopting it for prior to July 1 and send it to the Department of Water Resources. But as you folks are aware, because we made you aware, back in January 2021, the SPUC came out with some information that just kind of threw us for a big loop, and it had to do with the water reliability. And then again, after much conversation between the BOSCA folks, the wholesale customer of the SPUC, and the SPUC, they came out with a revised or refined projections of water supply and water reliability. And when we took a look at those and saw the potential for the impacts to the district's urban water management plan and what we need to put in there and how we need to report that, we thought that not only did we need to let you folks make you aware of it, make our customers aware of it, but we thought we needed to spend more time and actually engage outside legal counsel to kind of help us prepare, to make sure that we could have something to protect our position with regards to water supply and water reliability. And you know, we made mention, and you are aware of an action that the State Water Resources Control Board took back in December of 2018 when it adopted what is now known as the Bay Delta Plan. Simply put, it's got a longer name to it. But that Bay Delta Plan, while it's not something that, or it's still uncertain, there's many people challenging it and so on. What that Bay Delta Plan said that, you know, in the second and third year of dry years, the water that would be available to the San Francisco Public Utility Commission for the water supply here to the Bay Area was going to be dramatically reduced. And that's one of the reasons why we had Nicole Sancula from Bosca show up and present to talk a little bit about the Bay Delta Plan and what's been going on over the last number of years. And then Marty came and made a presentation also to talk about the impacts if that Bay Delta Plan were to come to fruition or become implemented, and what would happen to the district water supply resources if it went into effect and we were in a second or third year of a drought. And if you may recall, you know, you saw that it would have the effect of, you know, reducing the water supply available to our customers in excess of 50%. Now, a lot of us, you know, have been around long enough to remember that in 2015, when the governor declared a drought in California, and our customers were asked to reduce water, they did a great job. I mean, they reduced water consumption in the district, I think it was about 28%. You know, and I imagine if you talk to people, they said they did a lot back then to try and get to 28%. So we were telling ourselves, and I imagine you were telling yourselves too, if we had to get to 50% or greater, you know, how are we going to do that? So we're not there yet, but it was something that was more than likely going to have to be documented in the Urban Water Management Plan. And we thought it was going to take just some more time to think about that, think about our position as a district, as an agency, our customers, and maybe get some legal thoughts on what would happen if we did try, and what kind of language we could put in the Urban Water Management Plan, knowing that there's a certain way that you've got to submit your Urban Water Management Plan to the state so that we could protect our position and make it aware that, you know, we don't necessarily agree with this. And so, you know, there's a couple of things that when Tammy engaged the outside counsel, we wanted them to take a look at and give us their opinion. And one of them was, you know, what kind of language could we put in there to position ourselves and protect ourselves, knowing the uncertainty of the Bay Delta Plan, but also knowing that the state's Urban Water Management Plan process has a certain way that you submit the information. And then also, what would happen if the district decided that we weren't going to submit our completed plan prior to July 1. And so what we shared with the board and what we've been working towards is that, you know, there are no monetary penalties to the district if we don't submit our plan by July 1. But there are, if we were to apply to the state for some grant money or some low rate monies to do water projects, because you don't have an urban water management plan that's been submitted and or approved, you can't get any state funding until that takes place. So that's probably the biggest penalty. But at this point in time, as the board knows, our capital plan is not reliant or not using any state funds. We've got our certificates of participation, and then we've got our capital funding just from our normal budget operating revenues. So there wasn't really a lot of legal reason to rush through this, and so that's why we are where we are. And so now we're at the point where the administrative draft has been completed. It's been put out there for folks to take a look at and start asking questions as they do. And at least once a week, I know Marty has been reaching out to us and asking if we've had any comments from the public. And I think even this afternoon she asked, and I think Tammy, there hasn't been any public comment yet, other than the board president, as he was looking through the document, he noticed that there may be an incorrect reference on one of the tables. And so I made you know, Marty aware of that. And so she's going to look into that. And if it's not correct, you know, that thing will get corrected. So that's kind of where we're at. We've got that document ready. We think we've positioned ourselves the way we think we should at this point in time. And now we've got out there for public comment. And so next month, the board can expect there to be a more formal presentation on the findings and more of the details, nuts and bolts of the Urban Water Management Plan at their meeting. So I'm going to stop right there and see if any of the board members or somebody has a question that I can try and answer. And then I'll talk a little bit about the regional water supply.
Rena,
No question.
I was gonna add, since there were no questions yet, just that, one of the things that Jeanette and John Davison worked on is a web page specifically for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And this time around, we actually even developed an electronic comment form, so that folks didn't have to put their comments in writing or send them to an email, and it got buried in my email because the comments come to me as general manager. So we even went so far as to, set up and establish a specific email address that comes to my inbox, so that folks know they're communicating with the GM, but they don't get buried in my day-to-day operational emails. And so I think that's been well received just by a couple of people I've already talked to and talked about it, that, we allowed and created that format, so that if there are those technically savvy folks who can read 400 pages online and comment as they go along, they're able to do that and submit that form to me and to us, and they don't have to stop and write them out or email them out separately. So I think that was something new over what we've done in the past, and just to make that whole web page accessible for folks. And it was plastered all over the brochure that we sent out too, so that people had a good reference point for the whole process. So I just wanted to add that, Rena.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. So Tammy, can you go to page 59 so we can see that map of the regional water system?
Sure.
There it is. So that is a map of the SFPUC regional water system. And as most of us are aware, but for folks that aren't, that water supply starts in Yosemite National Park, that area over there in the Hetch Hetchy project, Yosemite National Park. It's a 1,960 square mile watershed that's and feeds the upper Tuolumne River. That 1,960 square miles translates to 1.25 million acres of land is that watershed. And that water flows to the Bay Area over a 167-mile series of tunnels, canals, pipelines, and gets over here. But even as we get closer over here, the SFPUC on the East Bay side, they have also what they call their Alameda watershed, which feeds water into the San Antonio Reservoir, which you kind of see in the middle of that diagram there, and also the Calaveras Reservoir. And so that Alameda watershed, if I didn't mention it, it's 30,000 acres in size, so you can see it's much smaller in size compared to the Hetch Hetchy system. And then over on our side of the bay, the peninsula side, there is another, what is known as the SFPUC Peninsula watershed, and that one's 23,000 acres in size. So it's those three watersheds that comprise the SFP regional water system. And then as you see in this diagram, there is just a series of large water pipelines. I'm sure lots of pumping stations. There's several water treatment plants, and chloramination stations and so on that make up the entire system. But all told, that regional water system has the capability to capture and store well over 1.2 million acre feet of water. And you'll see that when I talk about the drought, if you recall last month, I brought up a table that had information on what the storage capacities are of the different reservoirs. I didn't do it here, but you'll see it again. But just to give folks an idea that, and literally if you think about the 1.25 million acres of the Hetch Hetchy system, and you add on the other 53,000 acres of the other two watersheds, that almost translates to about a foot of water coming off of those watersheds every year and getting into the storage facilities that the SFPUC manages and operates. In a typical year, the SFPUC system will deliver to its customers, which is the city and county of San Francisco, all the cities along the peninsula here and on the East Bay side, and there's 24 member agencies or contracted agencies with SFPUC and 26 agencies that are part of BOSCA besides the city and county of San Francisco. They can use up to 300,000 acre feet. I think right now, what I've seen over the past couple of years, it's less than that. It's maybe closer to 220 to maybe to 240,000 acre feet of water a year. So if you take a look at what the customers use and what the system can hold, I mean, there's probably a good 4 years of water stored at any given time in the reservoirs that the SPUC owns and operates, and they try to manage that to make sure that we have water when we need to have it. And we've been very fortunate that even though other parts of California are looking pretty bad right now in terms of water supply, we're sitting in pretty good shape, and that comes from things that all of our customers do, and customers in the regional water system do, and then the SPUC folks managing it. What else do I want to put in here? So I mentioned that. So that, I guess the other thing I wanted to point out is one of the things that's missing here is the scale of this particular diagram. We're talking or mentioning that the Bay Delta Plan. The Bay Delta Plan is that chunk of wet marshlands that's kind of south of Sacramento and the main Central Valley there, and water from Hetch Hetchy goes through it. And then I think a lot of us know that water from Northern California goes through it and goes down to the Central Valley into Southern California. And for just the longest period of time, that whole area there and those molecules of water that reside in there and make their way through there have been fought over for many years, and they continue to fight it. And that's kind of why the Bay Delta Plan was or is there, because again, it's just another discussion on where those molecules of water. But I mean, that's one thing that's not described or shown here in the Hetch Hetchy regional system is, the water does go through the delta there, and there's a lot of people that have their hands or their feet or their pipes or whatever you want to call it in that delta system trying to get water there. And for us, it's a major part of the regional water system. So that's kind of where I want to leave it in case some people have some questions. I'll try and answer them. But it's a big part of water. There's been a lot of thought in how the water gets there, comes here, gets stored, and I think that we're very fortunate to live in an area of California where there's been a lot of thought, a lot of money spent to try and plan for things like what we're dealing with now.
I'm going to add on to that, including this discussion tonight about the regional water system. Our point was to just show the importance of and the efforts of all the water supply planning that not only we do, but everyone within this system does, so that if someone, is reviewing the draft or considers it, we just wanted to make them familiar with the fact that it is just very large and it is something that even our district is part of. I was going to just, before we leave this item, just share that, within the brochure, let me shrink this down a little bit. Within the brochure that we mailed, we actually shared the water shortage levels of action just to give that, and it's in that drop-off page. We did that on purpose. We made it an effort, and why we included the magnet with it is just so that, for now, they're going to be looking at the schedule. A customer and somebody who's interested in this process is looking at this on one side, and then when it's over, they could have this on the other side, right? And it was interesting to note that we just wanted to make sure, and you can even see with the little arrow, everything was intentional here. Jeanette, John, Rena, and I, we just made sure that, we already showed that we're asking them for 10% at this stage 1, which we're in. And then the red arrow down there at stage 6 to just make sure that everyone is aware that the potential for a 50% or greater than that is out there. And so we just feel like we've done our due diligence. We've certainly done the outreach. People have had the opportunity and are going to continue to have the opportunity to participate, and we welcome that, and certainly want to hear from folks who might have other ideas and opinions and comments. I will note that today, Jeanette and I happen to be talking and sharing information that just about the program she's working on, and I'm certainly not putting her on the spot, but she did share there's an uptick in long begone rebates. So is that as a result of the drought? Is that as a result of the messaging? Is that as a result of this? Where she says that the majority of the questions are about turf, artificial turf, she still gets them around because she has that opportunity to engage with them and be able to tell them about the native plantings. And so you might be seeing at mid-year an uptick in that budget, because we want to encourage that. She and I also talked about, increasing the rebate. from $2 a foot to $4 a foot. So there's just opportunities that we have, and we think that we want to take advantage of that. So that was interesting information she shared with me just this afternoon. So I just wanted to share that because I really like the way this looks. I like the way it came out, and that it's very clear, that we definitely, communicated it. And even if people have questions, they have an opportunity to say, hey, look, on this page of your brochure, what does this all mean to me? And so far, nobody's made that request, but we are aware that all of these got mailed. So that's all I wanted to add. I just wanted to put that in at the tail end in case there's any other questions or comments.
Thanks, Danny. Any questions or comments on any part of this item? Louis?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Rena, first of all. Good presentation, very, very detailed, very informative. And the brochure or the flyer that you guys presented is it's very well done, very well designed. It's easy to follow for anybody and everybody who is not familiar with the water distribution. And I also think that these information pieces and the education that we give to our customers is what is going to help us when we have to really clamp down on the conservations of water. If people don't understand, they will start asking why, and they're like, well, what are they doing with the other water? Because they don't have a concept of what's going on. But if they do understand, there is a better chance of them working with us as opposed to them fighting us. And this I thought this piece of information that came out is very easy to read. It says laypersons, and it is very easy to conceptualize what's going on for anybody who may not be familiar with the water system. So I just wanted to congratulate you on the work that was done, and I look forward to more of this. So good job on that.
Thank you, Louis. Actually, I'm glad John's here to hear all that. This thing got pumped out in about 2.5 weeks. So we worked some long hours on it, but it happens to be one of my favorite pieces, actually. And John probably could jump in and say that it's one of his favorite pieces that he's worked on as well, especially as quickly as we got it done.
Then, Tammy, since I
Yeah.
still gonna have the floor a little bit, I was wondering if, I think we talked about this already. Maybe it was you and I who talked about this, but do you have like a timesheet account or time card account on how much time is being spent by who on these reports that we're preparing, so
No,
that we can get an idea as to how much these reports are costing the Mid-Peninsula Water District?
not in staff time. This brochure costs under $1 to mail to each customer, and that includes the cost of the magnet, everything. But as far as staff
Yeah,
time
but to
putting it
produce
together,
there was a lot of time, a lot of staff time, obviously, so
2.5 weeks, and
to
we
get to
didn't work.
this
We
point.
didn't work every day. Okay, I'm telling you, that's the beauty in working with John Davidson. It all started out as bullet points. It all started out as emails from Jeanette, and then it just got hammered out in the end. So the credit, seriously, for the way it's laid out and the design, it goes to he and Jeanette. I mean, he and Jeanette designed the magnet together, and so it all just gets pulled together. We all just kind of throw in bits and pieces. We had the virtual meetings about it, and I think we ended up seeing about 6 drafts of this before it was finalized. But no, we do not track our time. I'm sorry, we don't track our time on these projects.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Louis. Kirk?
Yeah, I wanted to echo Lewis's comments about the brochure. I was impressed that it managed to summarize a lot of the issues in there without blowing up too much how disastrous a drought we might end up with, type of thing. I was also impressed with the 2 documents. It's been a long time since I read one of these, but they've gotten thicker and more legalese than I remember. I would be much happier if they were about half the size and not quite so repetitive, but I understand why we're doing it. It's part of the process, and we have to follow the rules, and we have to go through all of the steps. And it's clear that both staff and the consultants have made a real effort to try and make it as clear as possible within the guidelines. So I want to congratulate everybody who's been involved with it. And at some point, I may get through all of it and have some actual comments. But in the meantime, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. Sounds like you've gotten further along in it than I have, but that's not stopping me from having some comments. But first, let's go to Matt.
No, I just wanted to echo what the previous director said. I thought it was very well done. So good job.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Matt.
thanks. It was very well done and good presentation, Rena. So I do have some questions and comments. I also don't want to lose track of the issue that Tammy raised about potentially increasing our lawn rebate. So I'd like to hear about that. Basically, regardless whether we do or don't increase it, I'd like to hear about that one for that decision. Regarding these documents in general, 5 years ago, did we get a lot of comments on these? I don't remember.
Marty or Jeanette, I don't think we did, as I recall. I'm looking at the plan right
Many.
now.
Yeah.
I don't remember anyone attending the public hearing. It seems like we might have gotten a couple of public comments, but they weren't very significant, as I recall.
Yeah.
There were no public comments. Hello, everyone. There were no public comments we had to respond to that we received.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. And do we keep track of our sister agencies who are doing their own thing to make sure, I don't know, the only reason, I guess we could see if we wanted to copy anything they're doing and also to make sure they're not slacking off and then creating a huge problem for the rest of us when a drought comes along. Is that something we do?
Are you talking about other cities and other special districts?
Yes.
Okay, so, one of the processes we did before they finalized the public review draft is every time someone gave us a notice, that their draft was published, they made sure the consulting team had that. The other good thing that I thought happened this time around is consultants were talking to consultants, not that they don't, but they were really sharing information this go around. And so were we. Hence why Kevin Okada of Burlingame is here tonight. See, so we're all just helping each other out, making sure that we attend different hearings and meetings to see how it can help our agencies. So there was just a lot of sharing of information this go around.
Okay, great. So other comments. For the Bay Delta plan and a 50%, I've seen variously almost 50% or over 50% reduction. That I'm going off of memory, but I thought when we first talked about this, we actually thought it was going to be more than that. Not that that isn't hard, but I thought the first impression was it's going to be more like 60 or 65% reduction under the Bay Delta plan. Am I remembering that wrong?
Without getting too far in the details, Marty, what's the exact percentage? Is it 54 or 45?
It wasn't quite 60. I think it was about 54 for the Mid-Peninsula Water District. What happened was there were many iterations of from San Francisco of their runs of their models. And so I think at least 4. And so then there were also iterations of the cutbacks from cutback formulas and cutbacks from BOSCA. And so the shortages were reduced slightly, but not really a huge amount, as you point out. And the other change that happened was initially when San Francisco was modeling the droughts, especially the after the single-year drought, the multi-year drought, they were using ISG, the supply assurance numbers, as the base, rather than what they ended up using in the end was the demands. So these are cutbacks based on modeling of information from each agency of their demands through 2045.
Okay, that's interesting. I think that was one of the items of dispute between Bauska and the Tuolumne River Trust. And it sounds like they came down on the Tuolumne River Trust side ultimately of the demand-based measurements.
Yes, correct. San Francisco ended up modeling the drought cutbacks or drought allocations based on demands, not on supply assurances.
Okay, all right. And then to the extent I had a chance to look at it, and hopefully I'll have some more, I was looking at the water shortage contingency plan. And I looked at supply augmentation. So previously, both Matt and I had raised various possibilities of groundwater for augmentation, either deep groundwater or shallow groundwater. And Tammy or anyone else in staff, maybe you can remind me, I think we had some return on that. Did that come back to us? Basically saying unlikely to work. Am I remembering that correctly?
Correct. So you're going to hear as soon as we get finished with this process, we're in the process of finalizing a report with consultant EKI about their results so they can present that to the board, and they'll talk about, the options for shallow aquifer, that are dealt with by the county because those are wells on people's property, and then the potential for groundwater in the San Mateo Basin here within our service territory, and where the most likely spot might be if we were to ever want to consider following that channel or that finding. So I'm hoping September for that if we can get everything done. We've really just been hammering out on the urban water management plan and other activities, so it's kind of been put on the back burner.
Okay, I'd like to see that initial report that was sent to. I guess the question in my mind is there any possibility of that fitting into this? Because if it doesn't work, then no. If it does work, well, yeah, I'd like to chew on it a bit.
Yeah. No, it's nowhere near and even final. It's an internal working draft, so there's no way it could. But that's why it's mentioned. That potential is always there, and just because it doesn't get mentioned in here doesn't mean that we can't pursue it. Obviously, we can continue to pursue it. We're also getting involved at the PrEP project with San Francisco PUC and Redwood City and Foster City and Cal Water, which is dealing with direct and indirect potable reuse potential for the wastewater here. So there's other opportunities too that we're exploring here at the district and that we've been invited into. So no, there doesn't have to be any specificity mentioned in the urban water management plan about that. And yes, I mean, I agree, again, we're nowhere near mentioning any specific information in the urban water management plan about groundwater.
Okay. Well, all those other things, those are a big deal. If
So
something
is
happens, I guess.
so is a well. So is a well
Yeah.
for groundwater. I mean, even an emergency well, even a test well. I mean, besides the cost, and we're nowhere even near trying to figure out how much all that's going to cost. We're working on now EKI trying to come up with an estimate or getting an estimate so that the board, when they deliver the report, will be aware of what they think might be a ballpark figure.
Yeah, and I guess that's another thing I was thinking about looking at the contingency plan. It said, for example, do a massive recycled water program. Costs would be immense. All right, yeah, I don't know what to do with that. Maybe there isn't anything to do with that.
The largest element in the recycled water project was the sports complex, and it's now all artificial turf. They would have been the largest user of recycled water. The city of Belmont uses the next largest, but it would mean a treatment plant and all the purple pipes. So yeah, it's an exorbitant cost. Obviously, all the projects are going to be. There's no doubt. But we were hammering out thinking that there could be some potential for the sports complex, but still, there's got to be the infrastructure engaged. It's not just a matter of, okay, yeah, let's drag it over here. So.
But I'm I guess what I'm saying is there's a certain lack of specificity in some of the responses for contingency, and maybe that's unavoidable. Like if you there's a in the section preceding that, there's 10 pages of what we can do to reduce, and a lot of them, the lower bound on their effectiveness is 0. So I don't know what we necessarily get out of that. Maybe that's the way it goes. It's possible the lower bound is 0, but then there isn't a whole lot we can say about that in terms of how much management in advance that gives us. And then the last thought I had, which maybe is for some other time, is because of the complications for extending recycled networks to Belmont, I was wondering if it might be possible that we finance an extension of the recycled system elsewhere, like further in Redwood City, and in return they wheel some of the water, some of the Hetch Hetchy water that they won't need because we extended the recycled water for them.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes more sense than us trying to paint an arm and a leg to try and get purple pipe here in a way that doesn't work very well.
Yeah,
But that's
Redwood
all,
City,
I guess, really
yeah,
conjectural, not necessarily relevant to this
it would be.
plan.
I mean, we're not anywhere near our ISG, the individual supply guarantee. So I could see if we were topping up against that a bit. I know what you're saying. You're saying if there's a drought and we don't have any water, well, obviously Redwood City's not going to have any water either. That's why they're very interested in the PrEP project, and they want that, you know, the potential in 10 years or 8 years, however long it might take to get that direct or indirect potable reuse to help them in that minutia amount for the extended drought periods.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Does this need to be opened up as a public hearing just to see if there's any comment from the public? Don't want to make sure we don't forget that.
Yep. Thank
All right,
you.
let's go ahead and open the public hearing. Any requests from the public to speak, Tammy?
I see none in the chat, and I do not see any other members that I don't recognize who they are here attending the virtual meeting.
And there is nothing on email either.
Thanks. Okay, let's close the public hearing. Matt?
No, I was just going to say a couple things. You know, the groundwater thing. I mean, I thought I heard you ask for a copy of the report, and I would just state that I think the board should get a copy, not individual directors of anything, you know, procedurally. So just so that we're all seeing information at the same time. In terms of groundwater and just water supply, I mean, I think this is a continuous conversation and not necessarily one that is special to the urban water management plan. The urban water management plan to me lays out the best that we have and what we know. And, you know, we're not going to solve all problems in the 1 year it takes to develop the plan itself. The PrEP, you know, investing in recycled water, we can talk about that. I think the PrEP program and what it's trying to do is a sort of a demand hardened indirect potable reuse. That's where I'd be, you know, wanting to invest our dollars if we're going to put it anywhere. Because as soon as we try to offset with recycled water in the hopes that we get more Hetch Hetchy water, that's all subject to the arithmetic of tier 1, tier 2 cutbacks and all the other kind of stuff. And, you know, we end up not getting a, you know, 1-for-1 potentially. So I think that this is, you know, your points are very valid. I just don't know that now is the time where we're going to solve all of our water supply issues. Now is the time where we document what we know. And then this is a conversation I think that we have as a district on an ongoing basis. So as the PrEP study continues and as the Silicon Valley Clean Water and San Mateo continue to work together, so with San Francisco, you know, whatever that might be, if we can toss in more dollars in order to make that somehow get something out of it, not just for the sake of the greater good, but like, hey, what's in it for Mid-Peninsula? I would be in favor of pursuing that. Groundwater, you know, again, we're going to have to see what the report says, but just what little I know, we're going to be hard pressed. We're going to spend millions of dollars to get 100 gallons a minute, right? Which is not a lot of water. And at least if I have anything, you know, that's my prognostication. I don't know if it's 500 gallons a minute. I think we'll be lucky. And that's not enough to run a system on, right? That might supplement a little bit, and then you've got to maintain that investment and that infrastructure all the time. So I think we have to do some serious thinking as to the cost benefit of that before it goes. So anyway, I think that I don't really have any comments. Procedurally, we have one more public hearing. So final comments from the board then are at the next at the July meeting. Okay,
Correct.
that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Your comments make me think that it would be great to have some presentation on the prep program at some point. Tammy, does that sound good?
Yep,
I don't know
no,
when would be
we
appropriate.
will do that, and we'll figure that out too, because we just met as a staff because we got invited to the table within the past couple of months, and we just met with that team last month. So that's Redwood City, and I forget the technical team. Is it Brown and Caldwell, Rena? I don't remember, but anyway, we definitely will do that when the timing is right. Because no decisions have been made. They're just doing all the pre-investigative work and again, just trying to get it in line. But I definitely expressed that we're interested in that. I agree with Matt that if we're going to spend our precious dollars, because we would also have to be dealing with subsidence issues if we're drawing out that emergency supply from the groundwater, and there's other people in that area over east of Shoreway where the groundwater was identified, and there's not much over there and within our service territory, Redwood City, Foster City, that will be putting their straws, could potentially be putting their straws in that groundwater basin as well. So anyway, I think the better direction is the prep project so that we can, start out, getting the information to customers about, direct or indirect potable reuse. It's going to be expensive water too, though, just the preliminary dollars, and they're just really wild guesses at this point. Definitely are going to be pricey.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Tammy. Anything else? Are we ready to move on? Looks like it. Thank you, everyone, for all this work.
Thank you, Marty and Jean and Kevin, for attending. Really appreciate it and appreciate your comments this evening.